in this particular track to talk about global growth. And we're going to be exploring things like what's going on in the rest of the world, as well as how do you target here? What kind of things do you have to take a look at in this new normal for your database in order for that to be up to date? Um, we've got with us George Decay, who is internationally renowned and a lovely human being to begin with. And George is going to be talking to us about a lot of what's going on in the international markets and the international schools. And when we fix our problem with Diane, she'll be here telling you about a lot of the data surrounding the global markets. At Advancing Global EDU, we are an experienced sales and marketing professionals with years of experience in the education industry. We're poised to help people overcome the challenges presented by COVID-19 pandemic, as well as any of the other challenges that you may be facing right now, and helping you turn those challenges into opportunities. There you go. So welcome. As I said, welcome. I wanted to tell you a few things before we get fully started. A few production details, if you will. This presentation is being recorded, and we will be providing a link to the recording of this and all the slides to the attendees. You'll be receiving a follow-up email with those links. During the presentations, you are free to submit your questions through the chat window. We can present your questions to the presenters during the Q&A session at the end of their particular session, or at the end of the webinar when they come up. Don't hesitate if something comes up. We may not be able to answer it right that second, but we will be able to talk about it a little bit later on. So that chat window is your friend there. And if you do happen to encounter any technical difficulties, try refreshing your browser. That usually works. If you need assistance, you can also put a request in that chat window. And I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to put my cell phone into the chat window as well too. I can do my best to respond to that, but if I'm talking, for example, I will have trouble responding to your technical issue. So we'll make sure that gets done. So I'll put that in there now, okay? We are active on social media, and we hope that you'll follow us there as well too. These are some of our links that you might want to see here. How to reach us, info@Advancing Global EDU. All of us will be providing our email addresses for you as well. We'll be tweeting during the webinar today using the hashtag reachingforward2020, and we'd love it if you would join that conversation. Our Twitter name is @AdvancingEDU. So with that, let's get started. Sound good? I'm gonna check and see if my co-hosts are here. They're not, so look at me. Well, the word of the year here is pivot, right? Anybody besides me, you can raise your hands if you are as sick of that particular phrase as I am. You don't even have to raise your hands. I already know. You do have that option, by the way, in the chat bar. So we're pivoting here on this call so that I can start this. And after that, George will be coming up and doing his presentation. And with any luck, by the time that happens, Diane will be able to join us, and we will close out with her. So we're going to just play it a little bit fast and easy here. We'll see how it goes. My section of this is called Database Marketing, Focus on the Customer. And I am going to learn how to use PowerPoint one of these days. In this particular session, we're going to dig deeper into the kind of information you want to use now in particular to target effectively, especially in this current market space. There's a lot going on, a lot of changes happening, and having an up-to-date database is really critical to your success. Maybe I should start with my background before I even advance this slide. When I first joined the education industry, I worked with McGraw-Hill Higher Education, which was at the time Richard D. Irwin, and then I got purchased along with my colleague and our company founder, Mike Campbell, by the McGraw-Hill companies. We were in marketing and editorial, product development and sales for a period of time in higher education. And over time, Mike made a switch, as many of you are aware, to ed tech. I moved into the data field, and I worked with market data retrieval for 8 years on their major accounts team, working with people through the through the pre-K through college space and the library markets, had an awful lot to do with those. And during that time, I learned an awful lot about how people did that targeting, what they needed to have to be successful, and I've had a lot of opportunity to do some work on figuring out what our clients at Advancing Global EDU need to be successful. So that's where I'm coming to this session from. I first want to talk to you about database marketing to create a level playing field so we're all talking about the same thing. Then I'm going to dig a little deeper into the data itself. I promise it's not as boring as it sounds. We'll talk about targeting and ROI and make some predictions. You can also, as I said, put your questions in there at any time. And if you want to have a discussion, we can unmute at the end of this. But this session will be going to roughly 2:45 because of the starting time. Okay. So let's dive in. I'm not that big of a Simpsons fan, but I always laugh at this particular slide. Um, what is database marketing? Database marketing is a form of direct marketing, and what it involves is making sure you have the right customer data and consistent customer data, like the names, addresses, emails, phone numbers that you know you need, that you collect routinely, but also that you can share their transaction histories, the customer support tickets, and so on. This is a holistic look at the customer. This is a holistic look at what the customer has experienced with your firm, with your program, with your product, with your service, so you can understand it, you can analyze it, and you can use that information to both attract new customers who may look like those customers, or create a personalized experience for your existing customer base. Both of those things are equally important in this environment that we find ourselves in. And what you really need to know, and I imagine we're all aligned, is that it is foundational to a successful marketing engagement program to have a database marketing central location. You need to know your customers better than they know themselves, because you need to know how their needs, what their needs are, and how those needs are matching up with what you're offering them. This is not the time to be a nice to have. This is a time to be oxygen to your potential clients. And you need to know better these customers better than they know themselves. So let's talk about the benefits and the challenges of database marketing. I think we're all really familiar with these, and I am not trying to pretend that these things are novel or different because of the coronavirus outbreak. The benefits of database marketing are clear. You can identify customer groupings. You can market effectively based on those subgroups. You can create detailed customer segments for your lists based on a variety of factors. We've been doing things like demographics for a long time, right? We've been looking at here in the US, specific states or specific economic strata or specific free and reduced lunch, and whether our products behave there. There's more than that we're be able to do right now, and having a holistic database and a way of looking at your customers' behaviors as well is another way of segmenting your market. What this enables you to do is to design really personalized messages for both prospective customers, people you're not already talking with, and people you are already talking to. And ultimately, in addition to improving your overall marketing efficiency, you're looking at the opportunity for improving your customer's experience by improving customer service, um, because they've got a deep view of that customer's interactions with your brand. Everybody in your organization needs to have that same look. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we're all aligned on. The information that one department needs is just as important to that department as it is to every other department. Your support folks need to know what your sales folks are seeing and doing. Your sales team needs to know what the response has been from their customers to the marketing efforts that have been going on. Product needs to understand what people are responding to so they can build better, stronger outcomes with that information. The challenges of database marketing are not they're not easy to overcome. We've got some ideas on this, but they are definitely even more challenging in today's environment. We've always dealt with problems like data decay and data accuracy, and ultimately being able to act on data in a timely manner. So I want to dig deeper on those things right now with you all, and let me know if there are any questions as we go on. So data decay. 100%, this is not a new challenge. Um, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. If you put bad information in, you get bad information out, right? We all know that truth. Before this year, when I was with MDR, we saw a 20% or more turnover annually in positions. That would happen within a school building or a district. And we were building the ability to track that information. I moved from elementary school A to elementary school B, and I was able to see that. But there's a real tough time when people move outside the system they were originally uh, attached to. That was before this, with the pressures on budgets, with the pressures of schools that they're seeing in response to trying to live up to the CDC guidelines on social distance, et cetera. We don't know what this is going to mean, but we think there's going to be a much greater than 20% turnover, both in terms of we need more people, we can't afford more people, we have to stagger our school days. There's a lot going on with this. Look for this to be a major issue going forward. And as you guys are well aware, email changes are rampant, and they are the heart of your email marketing programs. It's still the best way to reach the marketplace. If you are dealing with email changes, you're looking at um, name changes, you're looking at changes in the domain. Perhaps a school itself is now having its own domain, a subset of the district domain. These are things that always have to be looked at. I've got 2 money saving tips for you, and that's what I'm putting on here, and I've written it out for you so you can see it. But I can't impress upon you enough the importance of cleaning your data professionally at least once annually, at least once, and preferably twice. The major players in the data space, MDR, MCH, Agile, and others, do major updates over the summer when we see a lot of changes, and I know they're in full swing right now on that. And their data is arguably the freshest in September. You can take your own database, knock it up against theirs, get rid of the dead weight, people that are no longer there, people who have that you have bad information on. Because what I learned from working with these folks is this: it is costing you a lot more time and money and goodwill than cleaning up your data set ever will. It's just not that expensive, and you don't want to spend time saying the wrong thing to the wrong people at the wrong time. I've said this already, but agnostic here on this. Any of the major data houses that I am familiar with are extremely talented, and they can do this for you better, stronger, faster, and cheaper, ultimately, using fewer resources for you than you can do on your own in-house. I've seen a lot of people try to clean up their database. Is it possible? You betcha. It's if you've got the cash flow to do it. If timing on this is really important, and you can, if somebody can do this for you in a week and take a financial resource from you, it is arguably a much better use of your corporate bandwidth to be able to send it to them to take care of it. That is in their wheelhouse. Database cleaning doesn't need to be in yours. Okay, data accuracy. One more time, this is not new. Right? We have always had a time lag. The three big data providers and the others, they've always been a time lag between what is truly accurate and where things are. Summer updates, ongoing changes, new data fields, and even the basics here are going to be changing because of this turnover, this time that we're in right now. I've already seen new data fields like COVID opens and closes on schools. We've had information, for example, on the files for years about when schools open and close. That's a big changing factor right now, as well as spring breaks. All that stuff is up in the air, but you want to track those kind of things. You have to expect that it's going to take our big providers a good bit of time to get to that. But again, end of summer, beginning of the school year, it's a perfect time to be sending that stuff in. When we've actually been getting customer provided data in the past, it isn't always accurate and it isn't always complete. Do you remember way back in February when we could go to trade shows? People would use their own handwriting that you couldn't read ever, or they'd fill out a form and make typos, or they wouldn't complete those forms. We always have incomplete data. So we need to know what's going on here. And there are certain things you must have about customers in order for your database system to really work well. Web forms, for example, when you send out an email and you send people to a landing page, you want to use drop downs whenever possible so that you can manage those customer inputs, because those customers make mistakes. And what you need to be able to do is to slice and dice the data that you have in your system, right? In a very clean way without making an assumption about what that customer meant. You want them, if they're going to be putting themselves in a bucket for you, to put it in a bucket you can do something with. And now you need to start thinking about other data that you need to get. What do you need to know that you didn't need to know before? I mentioned the COVID updates. That's a really big thing. And you need to think, well, where is it now? Can I buy it or can I discover it for myself? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There are certain things that we're not going to see on the files that you buy for a long time. You're probably going to have multiple data sources if you're looking to buy it all. And you need to figure out what matters most for your business in order for it to be um, the most value can be here. My money saving tip for you on this particular page, when it comes to data accuracy, you need to require at least these three fields: somebody's full name and their school district and a city and state on any web form that people complete for you. Or again, when we go back to the real world, you need to make sure you get that stuff on any forms that are submitted in person. You can, and I use the word beg, but you can beg for additional information like a preferred job title or specialized data that would help you out. But you should never ask for data point that you can't automatically map to your CRM or an automation system. Challenge number 3, there is nothing that makes us crazier in general than having leads, good leads, new leads, hot leads, and not having a follow-up plan for it. There's nothing that drives the Advancing Global Team EDU crazier, right? Absolutely crazier than being close to having a client interaction and then not having a plan for following up on that. Our leads are only hot for a short period of time. And you need to be able to act on that customer data, especially track those behaviors in a timely manner. So establishing a process, the who, the what, the when for responding to a lead is important. Is that person owned by a salesperson? Is that person owned by a customer service person? Does it matter what action they've taken on your in responding to you? All of that is what determines where that goes next. Automated templates that provide additional information can keep your business top of mind when your customer's already thinking about you. So that's why my money saving tips for this one are primarily, you need to have a drip campaign mentality, whether it's digitally or personally. And what I mean by that is you always have to be thinking a step or two ahead. What information am I layering to that potential client, that potential customer, that existing customer, this time when I'm talking to them? Because really and truly, your goal is not to share everything about your product, your service, your company. Uh, it's your opportunity to know that customer and to interact with them so that they develop a strong understanding of and connection to your brand. I also think that it's important as part of your startup time to have user and buyer profiles completed so that you can understand the difference between who's going to be using my stuff, what do they need in the way of support and contact, and who's going to be buying it. An example on that, of course, would be the influencer and the buyer persona that we often create. The teachers in the classroom are our users, but they're not usually making the buying decision. That often, usually, typically comes from a district admin. Those two people are very different, but you need to be able to sort and treat that data accordingly. Okay. Um, Alrighty. So I mentioned before that this data is for the organization, right? It's not for the salesperson. And having been a salesperson, I always wanted that information to be just for me. I learned early on that I was better off if my entire team understood what was going on with my account. What do I need? Obviously, we need good contact data. We need activity data. Have they visited your website? How long did they stay on there? How many times did they visit it? Do they follow us on social media? Do they open my emails? Do they click on links in my emails? All of those things can be tracked in a system, and they should be, because this helps you understand a number of things, not the least of which is how your customer uh, prefers that interaction with your brand. You need to track transaction data, and people in the entire organization should have access to that information. What do they buy? What do they ask for? How much have they spent? When do they want it? Those are the kinds of information that can benefit the customer team. Those are the kind of information that can help product make good decisions. You also want to know if they've got support requests, again, if they've posted about you positively or complained about you on social media, if they're good survey respondents, because that will help you going forward to understand, again, where is this customer in its life cycle with our organization. And I think one of the mistakes that is often made is a really simple one to fix, which is the touch point data. Who owns this account? As a salesperson, I own that account, but there were other people had skin in that game. When was that last touch? Did they talk to customer service? Did they talk to an account service rep, et cetera? And what is the next step in terms of that customer service? When you are creating these experiences, you need to think about all members of the customer team and the information each will need to be successful. Look at me changing that randomly. To be successful, you want to make sure that you are, um, okay, look at me. I lost my, I lost my spot. Well, we'll go back. Um, Nice. I skipped a whole slide. Well, okay. Luckily, I can just wing this whole thing back and forth. Please think about the entire team and the experience that customer is having. Put your customer hat on, and the information that you're gathering will help you understand what that customer needs to have a successful experience with your brand. Now, going back, maybe two, nope, just one. Going back, I want to point your attention to some data basics, which I beautifully skipped over before. When you're thinking about the people in your database, you want to identify them as buyers or influencers, because how you contact them, why you contact them, when you contact them is really important. I can also say that you can add social media tags and things like that to this as well too. Their social media, their LinkedIn profiles. We routinely collect that when we're working with clients for their administration in particular, but also if they have a Twitter handle and their activity on that as well too. For the district, you want to make sure that you have an understanding of the obvious, the name and the physical address. I think more than ever, you want to know those counties because it goes back to other information you're going to need. Size can be measured depending on what matters to you, but number of students, number of teachers, number of buildings, these are all reasonable depending on what you're selling and how you're selling it. And the calendar, the open and close, the breaks, that helps you know when and when not to send emails, for example, or when not to schedule webinars for. Um, Skipping down to the demographics, I'm sure many of you have already done this in a number of ways, but things like wealth indicators, how much free and reduced lunch is going on there, what kind of Title I and federal funding numbers do you have? College bound isn't really a wealth indicator, but it's another useful one depending on if your program is designed, for example, at the high school level. These are all things that can help you further hone what your messaging is to each group and figure out where your best opportunities are. Because right now, understanding where those best opportunities are the key to surviving and thriving this fall. If you don't know a lot of these things. If you can't put your finger on that, if you can't slice and dice your data in a way that targets your message to the right people, you will struggle. You will struggle mightily. Another important number that is often found is population. And I mean population of that county, population served by that public library, and the ethnic breakdown of that community whenever possible. We've seen a lot of inequities depending on certain population demographics. Understanding what you're dealing with there from a macro level is very important as you continue to hone your messaging, as you continue to drive the subgroups within your database. I know many of us are in ed tech, and there's a couple of major numbers here that you will want to be tracking. I'm sure you are already, if you can. One-to-one programs, that's a moving target. I know that my district that my kiddos are in is one-to-one after second grade or beginning in second grade. The first graders had Chromebooks at school but weren't allowed to take them home. I suspect we will be 100% one-to-one by the time August rolls around, and I'm sure that districts where they can do that are doing that as well. These are some of the biggest buys that are happening right now, hardware and making sure that kiddos have access to the content that we're offering them has become paramount in district leader minds. Bandwidth. If we're in school, that's obviously a big deal. If your program or service eats up a lot of bandwidth, what are you competing with? You need to understand what's going on in a particular district in order to be able to do this. And I'll tell you, and I'm going to bring it up again, bandwidth is a school building issue, it's a district issue, but it's a big problem with equity once you get to the home front, as we've learned very keenly, both in more poverty-stricken urban areas and very rural areas. Bandwidth is not given. Internet access is not a given. And the last point on technology, and I'm putting it under technology for a reason, is the AIM expenditures. How much are they spending on instructional materials for students? This is something that I have always advised clients to track. This is something that is a big question mark in response to the pandemic. So much of what district leaders are spending their money on has shifted because of we weren't prepared for this. We didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know we'd need Chromebooks across the way, and we're shifting those dollars there. There's been a lot more liberal use of those things. I don't know whether you can count on those AIM numbers. What you can count on them as directional right now as to what the districts might have to spend. Where they're spending them may not be in exactly the same pace going forward, but it is always good to know what kind of monies they had and what they are trying to do with them now. Hey, I've already done this slide, so I'm skipping forward it. So data, right, in the new world. I think probably for me, as sort of a bit of a wonk on this kind of stuff, is the fear of the unknown and what we don't know. Will schools open on time? I don't know. I have an opinion. It's not a data point. It's fear. I know I want them to open on time, but I also know I need them to open safely, and I need them to open with good practices in place for the health of our community. So what does opening on time mean anyway? Will we go back halftime? These are all question marks. And the reality is that's a moving target. And that's a moving target by in a very micro geographic way. It's not just state, it's not just local. It's really a district by district thing in many cases. I think another question, and I believe that I believe we all share this fear, is the unknown of what has the shutdown done to spending, right? I mean, we've all been reading the articles, we've all seen the stories out there. Property taxes are, I guess, okay because they're still asking for mine, but sales tax is way down. Employment taxes are way down. What is it going to do to the amount of dollars that are even available to spend? How does the spending affect the timing of this? Typically, right now, we'd have just come off the marrying period of time where everybody was making their decisions. But most of us know that a lot of decisions are still sitting out there, that they don't know what they're going to be able to spend that money on, and they don't know when they're going to be able to spend it. We've got July 1 barreling down on us, and we know that there are certain monies that will have to be spent, but we don't know what it's going to mean, and when that's going to happen, and whether people are going to be more conservative or they're going to push their decisions forward. It also is unclear what the shutdown has done to the priority of that spending. I know, from the people I've spoken with, that the priority has been access to learning, whether that's digitally or in print, depending on the location of the school district and the age, frankly, of the children being impacted by that, um, as well as feeding our community. I don't know what that means for everything else. But what the shutdown has done to spending, both in terms of timing, priority, and available dollars, is anybody's guess. You must read everything you can. And our community has been exceptional about posting articles on LinkedIn, on Twitter, about other things and sharing, because we are, to use a very overused phrase right now, we are all in this together. We are trying to figure out these normals together. And it is incumbent upon us all to use these community resources. When somebody sees something you haven't, it'll impact your business in a different way, but you need to know more. I think another big question, going back to data here, is staff turnover. I think the numbers will be great. There are a number of teachers who are afraid to come back to school. They're already vulnerable. They have pre-existing conditions that make them vulnerable. They don't believe that we can do the kind of social distancing and behaviors that will keep them and their students safe. There's a lot of anxiety there. Um, at the same time, I also know that we need more teachers in order to keep class sizes smaller. The answer is this impacts what your data looks like, um, but it doesn't necessarily change what you need to know about them. Keeping an eye on staff turnover rates and what's going on there is really important. And then my personal, it's not a fear so much, but it's something that we have to start talking about a lot more seriously, is what changes need to happen for remote learning needs going forward. Personal anecdote here, I have two elementary age students, and it was, we just finished yesterday, and it was not a great experience for my kiddos. We tried, and I'm in a great school district, but they're young. They don't learn well from this perspective. They need more, not just the social that comes along with being in a classroom with other kids, but the repetition that comes along with being in a classroom and the teacher saying things 3, 5, 7 times during the course of a day to sort of make it sink in. So when my little brain wanders, for example, um, I hear it one of those 6 times that it was said to me, and I learn it and I take it in. There's some big changes that need to happen here, if we're going to be doing remote learning in the future. And I think we all know we're going to be doing some degree of remote learning going forward. It's just a given. Um, I already told you about my money saving, or my money idea here, but you've got to read everything, and then you've got to ask the people you have in your circle, ask the people that you're competing with or cooperating with in this industry. Um, ask the ask the district leaders that you know well enough to say, hey, this is what we're thinking, how does that feel to you? We've got to be able to have an open dialogue in order to get a handle on this. I mentioned this at the beginning of the call, but you must be a must have. And what do I mean by that? Your solution, it has never been more important to be a must have for these schools and districts. Nice to have solutions, additive solutions, they simply won't survive this fall. I liken this must have status to oxygen. What can't your client or potential client live without? And how can your particular your particular solution line up with that must have. You must figure out what matters to them before you can talk to them about what you have to offer. Otherwise, it will fall on deaf ears, and it will also cast a pall on you as being tone deaf to what they actually need. We are in a must-have environment more than we've ever been. Nice to have solutions are not even a small priority for the district leaders I've spoken directly with. Okay, so let's talk about the new data points you might need. And I want to point this out. This is true in general, but some of these data points are unique to every client, everyone on this call, and every solution there. I say this with the obvious thing that ed tech has different things that they need to track than the purveyors of basketballs. Um, Schools buy both. Schools spend money on both. Schools care about both. But what the person sitting in the seat and making the buying decision on that cares about is more important. So take a moment, if you haven't already done this, to say what's new for for the people that I'm dealing with. And I think you're looking at, in ed tech, you're looking at something along the lines of one-to-one uh, bandwidth versus home internet access in the area, those kind of things, supplementals, you know, curriculum ties, those kind of thing. Basketballs, I don't know. They might be using the same basketballs next year, but whatever that equivalent is here, you need to understand what matters to that buyer and do that. There's a lot of other factors that are going on out there that will require research, and a lot of research. When all this started, I got a little obsessed with the worldometer and what was going on with the coronavirus. I admit that. I admit that I was tracking it. Admit that I was tracking it by country, and then I started tracking it in the U.S. and I watched those numbers climb. It's a really great piece. In recent weeks and months, and weeks, I guess, many of the states that are represented on here are now being tracked individually. Before it was just the state in the United States. Now it's down to county. So I can see the cases in my county, and I can look at grids of where the curve is at and what's going on there. What's going on with the COVID-19 cases, the hospitalizations, et cetera, will have a direct impact on the locality. Keep an eye on that. Assign a data point to that. Low risk, high risk, average risk. Whatever it is that will help you make a decision on it, you want to understand what the COVID vulnerability is there. You also want to track things like the loss of state revenue, the sales tax dollars. We know that our states are hurting right now. They're dealing with an awful lot of additional expenses that they weren't particularly prepared for before, and that is flowing down to our schools. Keeping in track of what's going on there in the state level will help you prioritize different states that you want to be active in, people that may have more opportunity than you may have previously thought, because they haven't lost quite the amount of revenue as, say, well, frankly, Illinois, where I live, or New Jersey. You want to take a look at the unemployment statistics and keep an eye on that. Those are also accessible by state. It's obviously not in one one database out there, and I think that's the big challenge here, right? All of this information is available. It's just not all collected for you in one place. So you want to be able to think about all these things as they go on. What I'm looking at here when I point out these just 4 possible factors that you should be looking at is, where do you see a pivot? Do you look at it geographically? Do you look at it based on unemployment or revenues? We've always looked at populous states like Texas, right, as a great place to make money. And Texas is actually a pretty good place to make money if you're set up to do that. And they've had a pretty decent run of it. They closed early in cities like Houston, and they controlled the curve, but they're expecting a bounce back. At least the health professionals there that I've talked to are expecting a bounce back. What does that do to your ideas? I'm not suggesting that I have an answer, because I think it's different for every single one of you on the call. I am suggesting that knowing these things makes you better able to target and understand your clients and potential clients unique experience in the market right now, unique experience with your brand. Um, and for our ed tech solutions out there, understanding the home internet access of the community that you're serving, as well as the site bandwidth restrictions that may exist within a school district itself, that will help you also target as well. If you have an ed tech solution that would really help a lot, and you know that it doesn't take a lot of on-site bandwidth, but it does take some home internet access, you better know for sure that 3 miles outside your town in Mississippi, that the school district you're in Mississippi, that they have home internet access as even a possibility. A good friend who runs a school district down in Mississippi, and I'm thinking of her when I say that, her kids were all doing paper-based work this homestay, this lockdown, because once you got about 2 miles outside the center of their town, there was simply no internet. There's simply not enough internet access to make it even vaguely equitable to the other kids. It's also why they don't have one-to-one solutions there at this point. It's a low priority because it needs to be based on the population. Um, Finishing up here a little bit on targeting and ROI, and in general, we all know this to be true. If you target and you target well, then you can measure. These are essentially if-then statements. So to target, you need to slice and dice, you need to create profiles, and you need to be able to change your message, your call to action, or the subject line, even according to that segmentation. You can change those things like the subject line and do A/B testing. You can change any of those things, in fact, to do A/B testing. What works most effectively with the segment that you've created? You need to be analyzing things like cost per lead and cost per sale. You need to figure out through tracking interactions, how much does it take? How many touches does it take to get someone to interact with you, with your brand? When do they start clicking on that email? When do they fill out a form or a survey? When do they follow you on social media? How often do they need to see you in order to understand what's going on with the brand? And where did dropouts happen? We know that happens along the way, right? People decide, oh, I'm not going to finish this. I'm not going to move forward with this. Does it differ by profile? These are all things you can measure if you've created that. What I'm trying to say is ultimately, there's before all this happened with the pandemic, um, targeting and measuring that ROI was so important. And it helped us focus more on doing the right stuff and eliminating the waste in our own systems, the waste of time, the waste of our resources. I cannot impress upon you enough the importance of doing this now. We do not have the time, we do not have the bandwidth, we do not have the luxury of focusing on the wrong stuff or saying the wrong things at the wrong time to the wrong people. The more you target, the more you can measure your ROI, and you can help your organization be more successful in the long run by knowing these things. So, some predictions for you, and I really think that this is part of a conversation that I've been part of in this industry for 7 weeks or so now. I think I've been home for 10, but I've been talking about it daily with other folks for about 7 or 8 once I got over the initial shock of it all. Budgets are tight and there is a fear of spending. There's a fear of spending because it's unknown. I'm afraid to spend personally, and I'm not spending millions upon millions of dollars and worrying about that kind of stuff. I'm trying to decide, on, whether or not we can afford pizza ordered in this week or whatever. I've got a fear of spending. My budget is tight. The school district budgets are tight, and they're spent in a lot of ways by things that they had never thought about before. And there's a generalized fear of spending because of the questions we've talked about here. What don't we know? The CARES money, the folks that I've spoken to directly, and I'd love to hear anybody else's thoughts on this. A lot of that money right now is going for summer lunch programs. We're feeding our families, and to additional hardware or materials to make remote learning possible. we're getting that in place so we have some flexibility and some opportunities next fall. The biggest opportunities I see for us now um, are in professional development. How do we meet these learner needs? How do we get my special needs first grader? For example, personal story, personal anecdote, but how do we get my special needs first grader what he needs to be successful in this new world that we're living in? How do we successfully deliver real education? We can't create classrooms the same way we did, and that experience can't be the same, but we have to do better. By fall, we're not. We're not surprised by this. We're all expecting some sort of brave new world of learning when classes come back in the fall. Those learners need to learn. It's imperative for um, our kids, our productivity of our society, and it's more critical than ever. How do we help? I mentioned it in the last sense, but the special ed environment and the elementary education have truly suffered during this time. I've seen a lot of high schoolers who've been able to get assignments and get them done because they've had enough training. But when we're looking at early literacy or numeracy, how do we help? How do we make it more accessible? There are opportunities here that need to be explored. And you know, I've spent a lot of time talking to teachers and leaders about the vibe at school, the social vibe. What does this look like post COVID-19? What does it look like going forward? There's a lot of opportunity for social emotional learning. There's a lot of opportunity around just what that school vibe is going to be like. How do we help? How do we get involved with that? Um, Parents have never been more involved than we are right now. In fact, we're in the middle, and we know a lot more than we ever did. We have greater respect for the teachers who put up with our children every day, and we have greater frustration by our own ability not to deliver the learning that our kids need. We expect more from our districts, and we are in the middle. Parents in general will be demanding more of district leadership and of teachers in the fall. That is a prediction on my part. I don't think there's any excuse for teacher preparedness in the fall. We are going to be able to bring them they need training over this summer. They need opportunities over the summer so that they can be prepared to teach, whether it's remote, whether it's a combination report, or whether they're in the classroom. They have a whole new set of skills that need to be developed, honed, and ready to use by August 15th. And we, as industry leaders, are in a position to help them do that. So, what do we do to make that happen? Um, and that's the end of this part of this. Um, I wrote it on here, but it's true. Call me. I miss people. I want to help. My name is Ellen Cleary. Ellen Cleary Wayne. My email address is here, as is our corporate email, our corporate website, uh, Advancing Global EDU, and I am in the Central Time Zone, and I'd be delighted to talk to you about any of the challenges you are facing, even if you just want to sort of shoot the breeze and sort of bounce ideas. I'm all in. I miss people.